wheel. Get you off of there. Hey guys, welcome back. All right, you can see what we're up against today. We got out one of my favorite toys that, unfortunately, living here in Canada, I don't get to use all that often. It's my boat. You haven't seen this before. This right here is the 1999 Chaparral 18 foot. I think it's a bit closer to 19 feet, but regardless, it's a 180 LE model. So that means it's an 18 foot. This has a 3-liter Mercury inboard-outboard engine. And you can see the stern drive down there. And on the back here, you guys can see this guy, which don't mind the mess. I got to clean this thing up. But that's my platform, swim platform that I built a few years ago. I'm going to show you guys today how I refinish it using tung oil. I'm also going to get the boat ready for the season. Currently, it has been winterized and it's been in storage all winter. And I'm just getting it out of winter storage, that is, right now. So we're going to get the plugs put in it. I'm going to hook up the hoses. We're going to hook up the ear muffs. And if you don't know what that is, it's this thing right here. Basically a fancy contraption that you hook a hose to that allows you to run a boat outside of the water. So we're going to hook that up, make sure everything is functional. And eventually, I'm going to go ahead and get this thing out into the lake, but I don't think that's going to be happening today. As you guys can see, it is not exactly the cleanest thing around, but regardless, this has been in my family since brand new. So this thing right here is pretty old. It's definitely over 20 years old. It's, in fact, going to be 22, 23 years old, so been around the block and come back. This boat has no hour meter on it, so I don't actually know how many hours are on the engine. What I can tell you is that 3-liter Merc back there, it's run flawlessly over those 22, 23 years we've owned it, so very happy to have it. Anyways, let's just mosey on across here, and you guys can see underneath here, it's sitting on a Shorelander trailer, just a single axle. It's got no brakes on it, so not the heaviest thing in the world, but when you're towing it and you hit the brakes hard, fast, and because there's no brakes on the axle, you definitely know it's there. If I could have one thing different about this, I'd probably have trailer brakes on it, but regardless, it's not on there, so that's how it is. Back here, you guys just saw me drive this in with my tractor. I have tried and struggled using my truck to maneuver it in tight quarters like this before. I've actually hooked up my ATV before as well, and well, the weight is too much for the ATV. Tractor is perfect. The truck, it's kind of long at the front, and so by the time you make those tight corners, you've got the front end sticking out quite a bit. The tractor is a lot easier. It's got a tighter turning radius. And this right here at the back, the 3-point hitch, what I do with this, I actually put I put this attachment on, and you guys can see I put a drop hitch into the lower portion of that attachment. And then I can use the levers inside the cab to raise and lower this, the 3-point attachment that is, and then I can pick up the tongue of the boat and adjust it as I please. The only thing that would make this easier is if I had a hydraulic top link, and that way I wouldn't have to get out and adjust the top link manually to get the angle correct for the tongue. Anyways, that's the boat. Let's head on inside and we'll have a little look-see at what this is all about. And as I make my way around here, I see a little hole there I gotta fix up. Anyways, let's head on inside and take my boots off. Pretty muddy out here today. We had since you guys were here last and we were working on the shed you see over my left shoulder right over here, we've had some monsoon rains, and so everything is really muddy. Anyways, here we are inside. You guys can tell I store it without the cover on, that way it doesn't trap any moisture. Everything is bone dry in here, but it is dirty, very dusty, dirty, and so we have to certainly get out the scrub brush and give this thing a clean. Up front here, you guys can see, here's the bow, part of the bowrider, and having an 18-foot boat, you got lots of seating. I think this boat's rated for 8 people, 2 up front, and then 2, 2, and 2. These right here, these are kind of unique, and if you have a boat, you know exactly what these are about. These can't say it's the newest technology, but these seats actually fold down like that, and you can see you can have a little siesta there if you like. Anyways, let's put that back. Let's have a look under the engine compartment. And we'll see what we're dealing with. So this guy flips up, and I'm going to try to, oh, it's going to stay for me. That's nice. Here's the 3-liter Mercury in here, and you guys can see it's got some stuff here we want to clean up, but I'm not going to get the air compressor and blow that away yet until I hook up the hoses. These are hoses that act for cooling. So there's some water when you're in the water that flows through here and cools the engine. I'm gonna get those hooked back up. You can see down there, there's the block and the starter and everything else up front. And we have these guys right here. These little plugs here we got to put in. There's 2 of them. Okay, so we're going to put those in, and I need to tighten up these. What I do for the winterization, and what winterization is basically you can take your boat to a marina or you can do it yourself. What happens is the technician makes sure there's absolutely no water going through the engine block, or the drive for that matter. That way when the water freezes here in Canada or cold climates and it expands, it doesn't break your engine block. If you can imagine, you left water in there and it broke your engine block, you wouldn't be having a good spring when you pulled this sucker out. So I take this into the marina, they winterize it, make sure it's fully clean of any water and moisture, and then they just sort of leave these loose. Sometimes they actually just leave them off like this. Usually they do. I think probably what happened was when I get home, I actually just put it there just before I come out to summarize it so I know where it goes. Just got to tighten those up so it doesn't leak any water. I'm going to check the belts, make sure the engine oil is good to go, and we'll call that good. In terms of the engine oil here, I actually change the engine oil in the fall so that there's fresh oil in it, so when I start in the spring it's ready to go. And just before we get that engine ready to go here, let's just have a look at what else we're dealing with here. Now keep in mind this boat is from 1999, so it's not new, but it definitely has performed as I would have liked. It's performed great. If we look here, I've got a little fish finder. You guys can look there, fish finder, depth finder. This thing's original, so it's old as the hills too. Here's the dash. You can see that beautiful plastic wood trim, and you can see all the gauges you need. Over here is my throttle. If you're not into boating, you probably wouldn't even expect it to be a hand throttle because you're probably used to driving a car. This is the throttle over here. You've got your trim, basically allows your motor to come up and down. Your trailer button, which allows the motor to come all the way up when you're putting it on the road. And down here you can do some work where you have the throttle applied without the propeller spinning. On-off switch down here. You can put a little tether on just in the case you fall out of your seat. The engine will pull that little switch and then the engine will turn off. Down here I've got a old as the hills VHF radio. You guys can see there, that thing used to be probably white in color and now it's faded to look yellow. Luckily for me, the rest of the boat is still white in color. Other than that, if we make our way over to this side, you can see our little glove box. Inside there we got a half decent Clarion deck there. This thing has performed well, so I can't complain. CD player, main power switch there. And that's really about it. There's only 2 speakers in this thing, one over there and one over here. So aside from that, you're not going to be pumping a lot of tunes out of this, so turn it up. Anyways, let's head back to the engine. This is what we're concerned about. Let's get this going. So I'm going to go ahead and put in these plugs and hook up some hose clamps here, probably top up some oil and do a few other checks. Don't take what you see here as necessarily the best way to do things. I'm no marine mechanic. I work on my boat. I don't work on anyone else's. If you don't like what you see here, well, you might have a better way of doing it, but just don't take what you see here as necessarily the proper way of doing it. Talk to a marine mechanic in that case. These darn bugs would go away, life would be a lot easier, that's for sure. Okay, that's good to go. Out drive oil reservoir is good to go. Belts seem good. Let's go check the engine oil. It's good to me. And darn bugs. I don't know how many months I've been cursing those bugs, but I tell you, they're still here. Okay, simple as that. Well, not quite that simple, I guess. You're gonna rag to wipe that off. Too good to be true. Strap the battery down. I think the engine's good to go. Don't see anything in there. These seats are kind of unique on this old boat. I'm sure there's many new ones that are like this. They obviously they can act as a seat, and they can also snap in like that. And if you put the go. If you put the other one up there, as you can see, you got a bit of a platform here. So got to put this in. This holds the battery down. Battery's right back here. I got a fresh one in this year. I just cleaned the terminals just before you and I got going with the video. I had the battery on trickle charge all winter. There's just one more down in the back there that on my final check I remembered I got to do up. One of the reasons I do a final check. What I'm talking about is a hose. It's the hose that was disconnected. Okay, now we're good. And I'm just going to clean off all the brush on the top of the engine. Nice dry grass and brush and leaves, and that probably isn't a good spot to be on top of the engine. Everything else looks good though. And so I'm going to hook up these guys in just a second. And basically what happens is this, well, I'll just go and show you in just a minute, but more or less I'm going to hook the garden hose to that and run water through the engine before I start it. So let's go do that. Forgot how to take that off. There we go. All right, so we got one half and the other half, and you can see the holes here where water normally goes in. I'm going to feed this through. And as I mentioned before, I'm no marine mechanic, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I wouldn't recommend you do exactly what I do, unless you feel like what I'm doing is correct. What happened is I bent this. That's why it's not working. There we go. Okay, we want that to fit best we can. I'm gonna go turn the water on, and then we're gonna see some water come out of there, and then I'm gonna go fire up the engine. I just had the blower going for a few minutes here. I just fired it up one more time. What I'm going to do after I start it, and fingers crossed it starts, I'm going to jump out of the boat and make sure the impeller is pumping out water. That means water's going through the engine, so you'll see me out back here in just a second. And this is the one time a year where my 4-cylinder sounds like an 8-cylinder, so I sort of embrace it. It certainly doesn't sound this good on the water, that's for sure. Okay, duck. Oh yeah, that's a beautiful thing. You guys want to see what we're dealing with? So far, so good. Sounding a little rugged, but you would too if you've been sitting inside a shed for the last 6 months. Perfect, that's what we're looking for right there. You guys get wet? There you go. Okay, let's idle her back here. I think we're good. It's always reassuring after the boat's sort of been sitting there that it actually starts. I don't like to take it to the lake and hope and cross my fingers and cross my toes and all that and possibly ruin a day if I can problem solve at home. So let's call that good. Sounds like it's gonna idle just nice. We'll shut her down for now. I'm gonna turn off that water. As you guys can see, we're practically flooding the place. And then we're heading to the back. I'm going to show you guys exactly what I put on that swim platform in order to keep it protected. Here we go. All right, guys. Well, the boat runs, so I guess we might as well put some time into the swim platform. This right here is an oak swim platform that I made a few years back. It is bolted to the stern of the boat, and it actually rides out of the water. And so when I'm driving the boat, and even when I'm stopped, it's not sitting in the water, and so that allows the wood to last. You're going to notice in just a minute when I show you the underside again, the color is quite a bit different. The top side is quite a bit darker than the bottom side. It's probably just due to the UV rays and the weathering. But I put the same treatment to the top as I put to the bottom, and I tend to use this stuff, and I have no affiliation with this company at all. I just find it works quite well. This is tung oil, and they make a whole variety of products there. I have used it on a variety of woodworking projects in the past. I find tung oil works really well because it absorbs into the wood, and it allows me to protect the wood. First things first, I'm just going to give it a wipe down and just get some of the loose debris off here. And I'm not going crazy here. No point of lying to you guys. I haven't got out here with the fine-tooth comb or anything to clean it off. I've just used a brush, sometimes the air compressor. And if it's really jammed in there, maybe not a screwdriver, but you guys get the point. You can pull that out of there. Okay. I think that's good enough for me. Anyways, after I do that, then I go ahead and get out my tung oil, and I tend to do the bottom first just so when I'm under there it doesn't drip on my head. And I sort of gave this a little stir around already. I'll just give it one more just to make sure that I've got it good to go. Need smaller fingers. Okay. And you know what? I'm actually going to start on the top. I sort of remembered one of the reasons I do that. If I start on the top and some of it drips between the cracks, then I go ahead and I can brush it out on the bottom. So nothing too fancy here. I'm basically just going to apply it, and I'm going to apply it liberally. I'm not going to try to save any bits here. I'm going to put down as much as I can, as much as the wood will absorb. I'll know when I'm done, when the wood stops absorbing it, and I'll basically move on here. Nothing too fancy. I just have a cheap brush here, and I just try not to paint my boat. But what I often do is, because I want to make sure to get the wood underneath this little trim piece, it ends up, this tung oil gets on the trim piece. I come back after with a little bit of soap and water and just wipe it off the boat. Nothing fancy here. And you'll notice there's a little bird dung or something down there. I just tend to take that off. That's about the only thing I'm concerned about usually. And I put this stuff on about once a year, usually this time before I go out for my first outing of the year. I usually give it a bit of time to dry though. I don't put it on and then go boating. I don't want the stuff to get impacted by the water. I certainly don't want to pollute the water either, and so I give it a bit of time, maybe a week or so, maybe longer if I can, before I put this in the water. Sometimes if I'm really ambitious, I'll do this before I put the boat away for the year. Let's be honest, my memory's good but short, and so 9 times out of 10 I remember during my first startup. And for those of you who are wondering here, I have had 3 full-grown adults, and when I say full-grown, I mean like no slouches. I'm talking about myself here. Definitely a few extra pounds around the belly. I've had 3 full-grown adults on the back of this swim platform, and I have had no troubles with this at all. And so I'm quite confident in the build. I'm quite confident in the material. If I wasn't confident in it, then I probably wouldn't put it on my own boat. Okay, just going to tidy up the last little bits I've missed, and I'm going to let it sit here for a little bit while I do the underside, and then I'll come back, and any bits that will take more, I'll put more on. You guys think of that hardware? That's a corner bracket off some dock. This right here, you guys see what I'm talking about? I broke the strap last time I was out at the dock, out at the boat ramp. I used this one because I had it in my truck and couldn't find a rag in order to protect the boat from the rash of this ratchet, so I used an old hat. Use what you got, right? Darn bugs. Gosh. Mosquitoes are out today. Okay, back to the top. All right, guys, well, I think that's all the tung oil I'm going to put on for now. I'm going to watch this over the next hour or so, see what gets absorbed and what doesn't. If it doesn't get absorbed, I'll come back and I'll just wipe off the excess with a rag, and we'll call it good at that. I was especially careful to make sure to put lots of tung oil in the end grain of these top pieces to make sure that it's fully saturated and make sure it's fully protected. Now, just before I go, let's just have a look at what we're dealing with here. Now, this obviously is a DIY swim platform, and I didn't have to go DIY. I priced out getting a fiberglass one made, and I can tell you it sure is expensive. So I decided, being the woodworker that I am, why not give it a shot? Now, the hardest thing with this was deciding on how to mount it to the boat. You guys can have a look-see and see what I did here. This is a corner bracket off a, well, it's off a dock. And this right here, this happens to be a galvanized piece of pipe, and I made a flat end on it with a hammer, obviously. Down here, I used a little bit of hardware and attached it to the bow, the stern of the boat. Now, when we talk about a water line, the water line on this boat sits right about here. So I wasn't too concerned about this bracket here because it sits out of the water. This one down here, on the other hand, well, that is under the water all the time. So I had to make sure I had the right material and make sure that it wasn't going to leak, because obviously if we have a leak there, well, the boat could be sinking. So that was the hardest part, drilling the holes in the stern here. And after I got over that sort of hurdle, I was able to get the rest of it mounted. Building the actual platform, I didn't find all that difficult. I looked around on the internet. I came up with an idea in my head. I made a template. I think I made the template out of cardboard. Once it looked pretty good, then I went ahead and started making it out of wood. If we look at the underside here, you guys can see I've got these pieces here, and you see all these holes here. This is where I have stainless hardware. They're stainless screws going up into the top pieces. And if we make our way back this way, down here, you guys can see here's the top pieces that I was talking about. They run from left to right. Right here, here's some more stainless nuts and bolts. This is what the bracket is attached to right there. If we make our way on this side, here's the other bracket. You guys can see it right there. And these right here, those are the brackets that go down to the very bottom of the boat. And I actually added this swim ladder as well, just because the old swim ladder, which was mounted right here, was no longer useful. So this one now tucks up. It's supposed to anyways, out of the way. So there's that. And one of the reasons I put the swim platform relatively high compared to other swim platforms you've seen on other boats is for this reason. When I have the motor in the full upright position, notice the gap here is probably only about 2 inches. I didn't want to have a cutout in the platform that allowed the motor to go all the way up. So what I did was I just mounted the swim platform higher than maybe some would, so that when the motor's in the upright position, you don't have to have that cutout. And I know some of you guys are going to ask me about the dimensions. So the dimensions from here out to here is 21.5 inches. From this edge here to that edge there, the corners, that is 58 inches. So it's got a bit of a taper here. I didn't want it to look like a big dining room table back here. So we got a taper back here. Nice rounded corners, as you guys can see. And I think it turned out quite well. So guys, that's it for my 99 Chaparral 180 LE, my 18-foot bowrider. This thing's been around the block and come back. It's been a really great boat. You guys just saw my summer startup, or in this case, midsummer startup. I do that at home so that I don't have any problems at the boat launch, and ultimately when I do get to the water, it ends up being a good day. So if you guys come back next time, I got one other addition to this boat. Aside from having to clean it, then I'm going to put on this thing, and I hope you guys come and join me for that. If you guys are brand new here, welcome to the channel. If you're not brand new, welcome back. And for everyone out there, you guys all take care, be well, and I'll see you next time.